Hey, welcome back to Drowning in Yarn. I'm Caleb. I'm currently knitting on this Little Wave cardigan by Gudrun Johnston, and I'm doing the shawl collar in garter stitch. So it's all knitting, but these rows are super long, and I figured it would be really fun to do a Q&A slash knit with me video. So I'm just gonna be knitting and chatting with you. I'll put a picture of what this cardigan is supposed to look like because right now it's like all bunched up on the needles and it's useless to look at. So let's get started, I guess. The first question is, when did you start knitting? Who taught you? A few people asked this, and I started knitting in February of 2019, and I actually learned at a local yarn store here in Chicago. I just was looking online, saw some knitting patterns I wanted to learn, and so I signed up for a class. And then this same person or somebody else asked, do you crochet too? And the answer is yes, but not very frequently. I used to crochet a lot. I would crochet amigurumi, which are like little stuffed animals, sort of, or little stuffed anything really. And I really like making those, but I just prefer knitting. Just find it more relaxing. And then somebody asked, did you and Brian, and Brian's my boyfriend, if you're new around here, I have some like podcast episodes with Brian where we just kind of go through our works in progress, what we're knitting, what we finished knitting, etc. And he shows off his plants. So if you don't know Brian, then check out those episodes. But this person said, did you and Brian both knit before you met? And the answer is no. I started knitting in February of 2019. He started knitting, I think, in March of 2019. And then somebody said, do you get competitive regarding your knits? And I don't think so. I think sometimes Brian might feel a little competitive. You'd have to ask him, but he's out of town right now. So I can't. But I don't feel competitive. I feel like, it's something we both love to do. So I just like to knit together. We can sit quietly and knit or watch TV and knit. And we kind of gas each other up, like tell each other how much we love stuff or how much we don't love choices. So we make better choices starting a project like colors and stuff. So yeah. The next question was, do you gift knit? And no, I don't. I don't like to. Somebody said, how do you say no? And I just say no. I literally tell people like, knitting is for me. I do it for my own mental health and for my own enjoyment. And I already feel enough stress to get things done so that I can show them off. And so I don't want any other added stress. But honestly, it's perfectly valid to say no. It's a mental health activity, and adding pressure to that would take away from that. And, if people love you, I think they'd understand. But if you like gift knitting, good for you. I know Michael over at Piece for Piece Crafting gift knits a ton, and, he's got some very lucky people in his life. Then a couple people asked, what is your favorite yarn ever? I really like knitting with Brooklyn Tweed tones. I think it's lovely. It's like a very rustic but beautiful, like 3-ply yarn. So it's nice and plump. It has really good stitch definition. My favorite yarns are probably Brooklyn Tweed yarns, just in general. And then somebody said, yarns you want to try. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to butcher this name. It's like Durarum Natura. I need to look it up. I'll put it on the screen. I really want to try their yarns. What else have I been wanting to try? I've tried some of the Retrosaria by Rosa Pomar yarns, but I really want to knit a sweater in Brusca. It's I believe, DK light worsted weight yarn, and it's really gorgeous. I have a couple skeins, but not enough to really do much with, maybe a hat. But I really want a sweater quantity because I've seen sweaters in it and they're lovely. Then somebody else said, have you tried to dye your own yarn? And the answer is yes, and you can check out a video where I dyed some socks that I knit. So I knit them totally in undyed yarn, and then I dip dyed them when the socks were done, and they're like some of my favorite socks. I love them. So yes, I have tried to dye my own yarns. No, I don't love to do it. It's messy, and I don't like messy things because that means I have to clean. I don't like to cook because I have to clean. So dyeing yarn is a little bit worse too because it involves things that are toxic, the acid dyes that yarns are dyed with, like in their like pure form, like not bonded to the fibers of your yarn. They're not food safe, and I only have my kitchen to dye with, so it's not my favorite thing because it's stressful, I feel like, or I don't love to dye yarn. But every now and then, like those socks that I did, it's really fun. And so many other people are so much better at it than me, and I like to knit, so I leave the dyeing to them and I knit with it. Let's see. What's your favorite part of knitting and yarny things? And then as a companion to that, what's the least favorite? My favorite part is just making things. I feel like before knitting, I didn't have like a true hobby. I was talking to Brian about this maybe last week, because he's the same. He didn't have a hobby before knitting and before all his plants. So like all these plants are Brian's, not mine. I would kill them if I touched them. But getting hobbies, like a true hobby, something that we put time and effort and devote, that time and effort to learning, to building our skills, like doing that. So for me, doing that with knitting has given me so much self-confidence, because I know I'm good at certain things, but in order to in knitting, I can be good at something and end up with this really tangible project that's mine, something that I made, like physically made. And it just gives me a lot of like fulfillment and satisfaction, but also just a lot of confidence because I can do something, I can make something. I love making things just in general. And so knitting is just a really like good form of making things for me that, people might see and compliment, but even more importantly, I look at and I'm proud of. So that's my favorite part about knitting. And my least favorite part, I don't know, it's expensive. It can be expensive. It doesn't need to be the way I do it. It can be expensive. But I don't even mind that so much. What's my least favorite part? I don't know that there are any things I don't like about it. It takes a long time, but that's good too, because then, I'm watching TV and knitting or whatever. I don't know. I love it. I love everything about it. Let's just say that. No least favorite things. This person's trying to get me into trouble. Sewing labels on a finished object, yay or nay? And I know people love to do this, and I do not. I don't want to put labels on things that I made. I don't like when there are labels on the clothes that I buy at the store. I never buy clothes that have like logos, really, unless I should never say never, but I prefer things with no kind of logos or insignia. So no, I don't want to put it on my finished garments. But if you do like that, that's the great thing about knitting. You do what you like. It doesn't matter what I think or what anybody thinks. So yeah, do what feels right. For me, what feels right is no labels on my finished objects. Do you do knitting full time or do you have another job? I've gotten this question before, and I don't know, it cracks me up because yes, I have another job. I could not make money from knitting because I'm not a designer. I have, I put out one pattern. It was a really basic Christmas stocking, which this is another question that's in here is, do I plan on putting out patterns? And I would love to do that. Maybe one day, and maybe I'd start with something like a shawl that doesn't need to be fitted, like an accessory. But no, I don't fancy myself a designer at this point, but maybe down the road, maybe, some ideas that are unique and worth having my voice out there as a designer will come to me. I did design like a really basic hat, and I need to rethink it. I've talked about it before, that pattern here on this channel, but then never put it out. And that's why I think the decrease that I used and the yarn weight that I used, it's beautiful and it works. But I don't know that everybody would love knitting it because it's a fingering weight hat with like a center double decrease that's kind of finicky. So anyway, I digress. For that question, am I going to put out patterns? Maybe. For this question, which I've already forgotten, do you do knitting full time or do you have another job? No, I don't do knitting full time because I'm not a pattern designer. I make money from this YouTube channel, but it pays for my yarn. it wouldn't even pay for half my mortgage. So I need money. So I have a full-time job. I am a software developer. I make iOS apps. I work at a major retail company doing their iOS app on a team of like 10 other developers. And I'm very fortunate with my job. It affords me a lot of work-life balance. I have a good salary that supports my knitting. And, you know, I have a decent following on Instagram, but you can't really monetize that. So I'm fortunate to have the time to do my YouTube and do my Instagram and do all the knitting that supports that content. But yeah, I gotta make money, so I have a full-time job. And then somebody else said, how often do you knit? And I knit a lot. I knit for hours a day. I think that it's helped by the fact that Brian knits, my boyfriend. I think it's helped by the fact that I'm a homebody. I don't like to go out. And for the last, 2.5 years, it's been better not to go out. So I knit for hours a day, 3-4 hours a day. And I knit during meetings sometimes whenever I don't need my camera on. But I only do things that are very I don't want to say mindful, right? So things like this where I can just knit and do something else. So for me, it helps me pay attention because otherwise my hands are free to Google things or not really, but my mind will wander, but knitting helps me stay focused. So in those meetings where it's really important that I pay attention, but I'm not a main contributor and my camera doesn't need to be on, I will knit because it really does help me focus. I know that, my coworkers may not understand that if they were to see me knitting, so that's why I don't do it when the camera's on. But truly it helps me. So I'm able to knit while I'm working sometimes. Let's see. What do you do when you're not knitting? What's your favorite non-knitting hobby or activity? A few people ask this, and I guess it's making YouTube videos. My undergrad degree is in film. So I say undergrad because I went to the University of Texas for radio, television, film. And then I went to the University of Houston for law school. I practiced law for a few years, did not like it, learned to code, and now I'm an iOS developer, as I said. But when I'm not knitting, I really do like playing with all my cameras and lenses and taking pictures or filming videos because it kind of feeds that creative, a different side of that creative desire that I have to make things, and uses some of that stuff that I learned in film school. When I was in undergrad, I worked full time to pay for it and pay for my life. So I never really got to do a lot of practical film stuff. What I learned was mostly film theory, writing papers about film and stuff, just because I was working more than 40 hours a week while I was in college. So yeah, I think making these videos and playing with that and learning about it all is sort of my other hobby. Let's see. Oh, so somebody asked, as a content creator, how do you keep yourself motivated with projects and filming, editing, etc.? What's fun, what's less fun? I stay motivated by guilting myself into doing stuff. No. So I know that I'm going to answer this question and people are going to say, oh, you don't have to do this. You don't have to make videos. We're just happy to see it. That's appreciated. I love the sentiment, but it's not helpful because, the calls are coming from inside the house. I pressure myself. That's just the kind of person that I've always been. So if I don't put up a YouTube video for 2 weeks, I stress out. But that's an internal thing, not to do with pressure that I feel from anybody else. That's pressure I put on myself. So I stay motivated by pressuring myself sometimes. Other times I'll be motivated by being really excited about something. Right now I'm knitting a baby sweater to do a 2 at a time sweater sleeve tutorial. And that's something that I've wanted to do for a while. I finally had the opportunity to do it. I am sort of gift knitting. I'm knitting the sweater for my neighbor's baby just because the timing worked out to do a baby sweater for my tutorial. So I'm doing that. And that's something I'm excited about. So that motivates me. Other times I don't feel super motivated and then I don't make a video and I will stress about it. But yeah, I don't know. I stay motivated by making a list, working on things that excite me. I choose my projects based on what I really want to be knitting. And so then when something happens that I think is worth sharing, I'm excited about sharing that thing. Because ultimately, like, yes, I do love to share things and I do this to help people, but I mostly do it because it's for me. Like, I just love to talk about knitting and I get to talk about knitting and I have people that listen to me talk about knitting. So making all these videos and talking about it, I hope people get inspired about it, but it inspires me just as much because it helps me to put into words some of the things that I'm thinking about. And it helps me to think things through a little bit more. So for instance, I was knitting my Leelanau sweater. It was a colorwork sweater, and I did a little tutorial, or really a show and tell, on how I knit colorwork continental style. And it forces me, doing that forced me to think more about how I do it, to kind of like solidify like what some of my ideas and thoughts and processes are for, you know, knitting stranded colorwork as a continental knitter, so that I could then tell that to people. Same kind of process as like journaling, right? Like, you may not know what you're thinking until you put it into words. So now I can talk about that a little more intelligently because I spent time thinking about it in order to make a video about it. So that motivates me, is like this idea of sharing things, but also just kind of like being excited and wanting to translate that excitement into like something that I can show people. It's a very roundabout kind of answer to that question. What's fun and what's less fun? What's fun is like whenever I make a video I'm excited about. What's less fun is sometimes I talk myself into a corner. Like, I'll say, I'm going to make this video, and then immediately don't want to make it, but then feel like I have to. So that happened. That's happened before. I'll just say that. And those videos are less fun to make. So in 2022, I'm not doing that. It hasn't happened that often. I've put up like 73, almost 75 videos, and it's only happened with a few, and that's all self-imposed. Like I said, like, none of this pressure is coming from y'all, like, as viewers of my channel. It's all from in here. So then somebody relatedly said, do you have any tips for other knitters that maybe want to do a podcast like you are, but feel intimidated due to the high standards of your video? Which, first of all, thank you. You should not feel intimidated. My videos, you know, you said high standards, and that's very sweet. But I just do what I do because I like doing it. I'll just say that the videos that I watch on YouTube tend to be videos where people plop their camera down like I'm doing right now and just record themselves and then upload that straight to YouTube. And those people get a lot more views than me. I have a lot of subscribers because I have one video that kind of blew up, and probably almost half my subscribers are from one video. So, you know, that isn't typical. And subscribers aren't worth a whole lot. It's the views that matter on YouTube, for like ad dollars and just for engagement and community building. Subscribers just really help you have a little bit more of like a built-in base of people who will see your videos on their home screen because they've subscribed, but it doesn't really matter. So think about all the people that you like to watch and think about what you can do, you know, differently, like what you can bring to it. For me, the videos that I make, the shorter videos, doing some of the camera stuff that I like to do, that's just what I can bring to it. But you don't need to do that in order to be good at being on YouTube, because most of the people that are most successful on YouTube as like knitting type people don't do that and get tons more views and inspire a lot more people because of it. So do what feels right and do what you want to do, and don't worry about anybody else. Like, I very much appreciate the compliment, though, I will say that. But yeah, don't worry about measuring up. Just do what feels right. Then somebody said, how do you think being a YouTube influencer, how do you think being a YouTuber influenced your knitting? And I sort of touched on this. I think I overthink my projects sometimes. I still only knit things that I want to knit, with yarn I want to knit with. I will sometimes get yarn given to me. It's very infrequent, and whenever that happens, I always mention that it was gifted to me. I've never been paid to knit anything. I've never knit anything because I felt like I had to. If yarn was given to me, I mentioned that it was gifted. And with that yarn, I knit what I wanted to knit and when I wanted to knit it. So there's like my refrigerator just went off. So if you heard buzzing, that's what that was. I'm in my kitchen. It just went off, so it might be a little quieter now. What was I saying? Oh geez. Oh, being being a YouTuber has just influenced it in that I've put a little bit more pressure on myself to like finish things in a timely manner or whatever. That's more to do with Instagram, I feel like, though, because I feel like I have to appease the algorithm and post frequently. But I'd be knitting this much anyway, so I don't know. Maybe I feel a little more stressed because of sharing my knitting, but again, that's internal dialogue. So what do you do when you feel burnout, which I think is related? I'm a person who can be like completely content, just like laying down, doing nothing. And that's what I do when I feel burnt out. And then like, that'll be fine, fine, fine until I'm like starting to be like depressed about it. And then, I wallow for a minute and then I get up and then I do things. So I don't really have a good answer for burnout because when I feel burnt out, I just stop all activities. It's not great, is it? But it's what I do. And relatedly, somebody said, what do you do when your knitting mojo is low or when knitting frustrates, bores you, or when you aren't satisfied with the things you make? And I think this is slightly different because this is not talking about burnout. It's just like when I'm less inclined to knit. And that's when I would get a project that is basic, like a vanilla sock or a garter stitch shawl or something, and just knit on it. When my knitting mojo is low, I don't stop knitting. I continue to knit. If, in a month, any given month, I probably don't knit like 2 days. So those times when my knitting mojo is low, I still knit. I just knit something easy. And then that desire to do something a little more complex or whatever comes back. And I do that because I know knitting is good for me. Like mentally, it's good for me. So I just keep doing it. It's like the only thing that I do that's good for me. So I don't stop when my knitting mojo is low. Or whenever I'm bored or unsatisfied with what I'm working on, I just grab something simple every time. Oh, I need to hurry up because we are almost 30 minutes into this, 25 minutes into this, and I'm rambling. So I hope you're still with me and working on something you enjoy knitting. And thanks for listening to me, but let's keep on. What's on your knitting bucket list? What is the technique goal? So a few people ask this and the answer is just like a seamed garment, but I need to just get over the fear because I don't love knitting flat, like stockinette or cables or whatever. So I need to get over it. And I'm worried about wonky seams, like just not doing it right. Because I have seamed a couple things before, but this was like way a long time ago. And if I'm being honest with myself, I just rushed through the seams and I didn't like them. So I'm worried that I'll, knit a whole sweater and then mess it up. But I need to get over that fear and just do it because that's on my bucket list. A seamed sweater because I think they just look really tailored and beautiful and fit really nicely. So I want to do that. What are the techniques that you have tried that you have been totally stumped by to the point that you abandoned the project because even with practice, it's too difficult or unenjoyable. And there's no techniques that I've tried that I couldn't get. And my advice there is just like, be brave and bold. And like, if something seems scary, just do it anyway. And start with a swatch or a hat so that you can learn on something small. And if you mess up, it's not like a whole sweater. And then once you kind of master it on that smaller thing, you can move on to something bigger. So that's sort of my answer to that. And it's more just, don't be afraid because there's almost nothing you can't fix in knitting. And if you mess up, you're going to learn more from messing up than being perfect on the first try. All the biggest lessons I've learned in my life are from completely making mistakes. So I kind of bring that philosophy into my knitting. Like messing up is not a bad thing. Let's see. Somebody said, what's your first knitted garment? How did you learn to knit a sweater? Because mine was a sweater, I should have said first. So my first knitted garment was a sweater. Then somebody said, how did you learn to knit a sweater? And the answer is I just knit a sweater. I didn't learn. There are a lot of sweater knitting classes that you can take, especially now you can do them on Zoom. There's a lot of knitting instructors that are teaching online. So if you're nervous, do that, right? Like find a knitting class and sign up, and that's going to cost a little bit more money. I did the flax sweater by Tin Can Knits for a baby. So I did the smallest size and with acrylic yarn, some nice acrylic from Paintbox Yarns. And doing that gave me all the confidence I needed to make a larger sweater. I learned that it was really just 3 tubes with some simple shaping. If you can increase, decrease, and do basic short rows, you can knit a lot of sweaters, yoke sweaters or raglan sweaters. So just knit a sweater. And if you're worried about knitting one for you, knit one for a baby. And that way, if you mess it up, who cares? It keeps the baby warm. And you can donate it if you need to. So that's how I would say to learn. That's how I learned. Then somebody said, how would you recommend to taper the body of the sweater? Because for my first sweater, it was the flax sweater for myself in 100% wool, wool of the Andes from Knit Picks. I think I spent like $40. I got it on sale for the whole sweater's quantity. So it was a great deal. It's a little bit rougher than maybe I would like typically. It's on the rustic side, but not like a soft rustic. But I think it's worn in quite nicely. So for the money, I would do it again. In a heartbeat, I would knit with it again. I liked it. But then my point was that whenever I got to the end of it, I knit it just like straight down. So it fit me in the chest. But the way that my body's shaped, if I don't taper like the body, so from the underarm down a little bit, so just make it slightly smaller as it goes down, I end up with something that hangs in the back because just of my posture and everything. So for me, I need to taper the body of a sweater a little bit so that it kind of appears to fit the same size all the way down. It just gives me a better fit. And so that first sweater, I didn't do that. I didn't like the fit. I was discouraged. I actually undid the bind off, ripped it back up, and then tapered the body, and then I was much happier with it. And going forth, I've tapered, I believe, every sweater I've ever knit. And how I do it, I've talked about in a video before, so I'll put a link to that video down below. But what I think you should do if it's something you really want to do is knit a pattern that has the tapering in it, and then you learn. And you could apply that technique from that other pattern to anything that you do going forward. And a pattern that I've knit that has tapering in it and is a good kind of introduction to both yoke sweaters, and it has a little bit of raglan shaping after the yoke, is the Ott sweater by Jared Flood. I think if you want to learn to taper the body of your sweater, that's a great place to start because the pattern walks you through it, and then you'll know from then on out how to do it. Which designers have been inspiring you lately? Oh, geez. I've been really, I'm continuously inspired by Summer Lee. Her sock patterns are just so beautiful and she's so clever. As far as sweaters go and other garments, I think Andrea Mowry's always a big inspiration because I just really like her aesthetic. Her sweaters aren't always ones that I can see on my body. Some of them are, but her accessories are all gorgeous and they're simple, and that's more of my aesthetic. So, her photography and her designs always do inspire me. Who else? Yeah, I'll just leave it there. If you could knit only one kind of pattern, e.g. socks, sweaters, etc., what would you pick? And then similarly, if you could only knit patterns from one designer, who? So only one kind of pattern, I probably would have to say sweaters. I love knitting socks. I love knitting shawls. But if I had to only knit one type of thing forever, for me, sweaters, I feel like would give like that variety of knitting that I would want and could feel satisfied forever. I do love knitting sweaters, but I like knitting everything, but yeah, sweaters probably. And if I could only knit one patterns from one designer, I can't answer this question. It's too hard because there's nobody that I'm just going to like everything they do. That's just not, there's nobody who I would knit their patterns sight unseen. And I think that would be like what I would need to say I could only knit, like if I had to pick. Even like Summer Lee, for instance. I genuinely love every pattern she puts out. But she puts out a lot of colorwork sock patterns, and I don't love knitting colorwork. It's not like my favorite thing. And I don't love knitting colorwork on socks. Like I just don't enjoy that. So even though every pattern that I've ever seen from her is like spectacular, I don't want to knit every pattern personally, but that has nothing to do with the pattern. That's me. So I think that's my answer is nobody. Oops. Oh, there might be some noise. My neighbors are coming down the stairs back here, so sorry. What item do you have no interest in making whatsoever? Shorts. I've seen knitted shorts and knitted pants, and not for me. Great for other people, not for me. Then I'll just move on. What do you use to knit socks? Magic loop, DPNs, or 9-inch circulars? Magic loop and DPNs, and I will switch off. Sometimes I use DPNs because I want to. Sometimes I do magic loop because I want to. There's not always rhyme or reason to which I use. Sometimes it's just which needles I have handy. I do like to switch off just so I stay like good at both, I guess. I do have the little circular needles. I have 2 sets that I purchased. They're like the 2 interchangeable sets of circular needles from Chaogu. So they come in like red and blue, and one is like the smaller sizes, so like sock on up to like, I don't know, let's say like a 5 or something. And then the other one is like the larger needle sizes. So like you could do sweater sleeves up to bulky, you know. And I bought them because I thought I would like them, and I'm a completionist, so I bought both of them, even though I really only wanted the ones for socks. So one might wonder why I didn't just buy a 9-inch circular US 1 to knit socks, because US 1 is what I use for everything. But one should not ask me that because I have no like clue. And yeah, I spent all that money on the 2 sets, and I don't like using them at all. My hands are too big, it hurts. So Brian uses them, so they get use. I have used them on sweater sleeves sometimes when I can use the like longer. So they come with 2-inch tips and 3-inch tips. And if you have the 2 3-inch tips on, so the smallest you can make is I think like a 12-inch. It's more palatable, but even that I don't love. So not 9-inch circulars, let's just say that. Somebody said, how do you keep track of your work, where you are like in a pattern? And the answer is I use an app on my iPad. I'm a digital knitter. I use an iPad, iPhone, my Mac. I'm an iOS person. Like I said, I'm an iOS developer, so I cannot give a lot of advice on Android. Sorry, I don't have the experience. So yeah, I use GoodNotes. I used to use Knit Companion. I don't use Knit Companion anymore. It's not my favorite. It works for a lot of people, and that's awesome, but the interface of that app and I don't get along. So I use GoodNotes, and in the future, at some point, I think I want to do a video on how I use GoodNotes. When that is, I don't know, but it's on my list. So that's how I use an app on my iPad, because then as I'm working on my iPad and then move over to my iPhone or my computer, I always have my pattern. I don't have to worry. And I use my Apple Pencil to, I'm looking at my iPad, which is why I keep looking down there. I use my Apple Pencil to write in my pattern. So that helps me stay organized. Let's see. How do you avoid hand-arm strain? I don't. I get it a lot. Because I will knit through pain, and that's the stupidest thing to do, and I don't recommend it, but I do it. So I'm trying to get better at taking a lot of breaks, stretching. I learned some stretches online. I also have taken to, if I start to get hand and arm strain, I just don't knit that day. And it takes all my willpower to do it, but I don't. And then usually it goes away, but you know, I do get hand and arm pain, and I haven't been knitting that long, and I want to be knitting for a long time. So I'm starting to think more about this and take it seriously, because it is serious, because I don't want to end up, you know, with a problem and then not be able to knit. There's a few left. So the rest are personal questions, and I'm going to go a little bit faster. There's 6, I think. So the first one's, how old are you? I'm 35. I'll be 36 this year. I know it's not old, but it definitely feels old because everything hurts. The next one is from Brian. He answered the little question box on my Instagram. He said, "Which dog is your favorite?" Because he loves to say that Riley's his favorite, and I get mad at him because we have two dogs, Riley and Molly, and I say that we shouldn't play favorites. So my answer is both of them are my favorite. And Brian is just trying to stir up trouble. Where would you most like to travel? Japan. I really want to go to Japan for a lot of reasons. I want to go to Tokyo Disneyland and Tokyo Disney Sea. I want to go see like outside of Tokyo, but really I want to go to Tokyo a lot. I want to go to like their electronics district. I just really want to go to Japan. What's your favorite cuisine? So I have like desert island foods, right? Like if I could pick like four types of food, pizza, nachos, fried rice. And I really like all types of fried rice, but I really lately have been loving Thai basil fried rice. So I really like Thai food, but I also like, I don't even know what I was going to say. Then I'm going to say pizza, nachos, fried rice, sushi. Sushi's the last one. I love sushi. I could eat sushi for every meal. So those four things are my favorite cuisines. What do you like most about living in Chicago? I really like the winter. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I am a homebody. I don't like to go outside. I don't love summer. It's too hot. I'm from Texas. I've had enough heat my whole life. I like the winter. I like being able to wear my knitwear. And I like having an excuse to stay inside, watch movies, and knit. So that. I also really like having good public transit because living in Austin and Houston, which is where I spent, most of the first 30 years of my life, there's no public transit that is really useful. So being able to live here and not need a car, I do not have a car, and I've been perfectly fine. Like I love that. It does make me feel like more of like part of a community. Like I'll sometimes see the same people, and I don't talk to them. I don't know who they are, but I just like seeing the same people a lot because then just living their lives, it just makes me feel like a city dweller, which is something I always wanted. And I know it's stupid, but it is what it is. I really like that. And then the last question is, what are some of your favorite books? This is hard, but I'm currently reading the third book in a series. That's like it's like a period YA series with like anachronistic themes. So the first one's called A Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue, and it's about a bisexual character, and he's going on like a grand tour of Europe, like as part of, I guess this was a thing that like more moneyed people in, I don't know if it's like Victorian times. I'm not really sure what the time period is. I probably should know because I'm on the third book. Let's say the 1800s, but that they would do. So they would go on these grand tours, and his like companion partner, well, his sister wants to be a doctor, which is frowned upon, and his companion slash partner, who ends up, I won't spoil the love story, but that character is has seizures, and I guess at that time they thought the seizures were, you were like, what's the word? Not haunted, possessed, I guess. So that book is really good. It's really funny. It deals with these themes that are kind of anachronistic to that time period. Like you wouldn't have talked about them, but it deals with them in a really good way. And then at the end, it tells you how there's historical basis for the way that she writes about some of these things. And then the second one's called A Lady's Guide to Petticoats and Piracy. And it's from the main character. His name was Monty. And the first one, it's his sister. So they're all in the books together. It's Monty, Percy, and what's his sister's name? Oh, geez. Anyway, it's her perspective, and the other characters are also in it. And then the third one is called A Nobleman's Guide to Shipwrecks and something, and it's really good. But this one is like the main characters from the first two are much older, and this is their younger brother that they didn't know they had. And he kind of goes on an adventure and runs into them. And I really like them just because they're funny. They deal with a lot of different topics that are, I think, important, but in a way that you're not really realizing that you're thinking about these things and seeing the world through like different viewpoints. And yeah, I just really like them. So those are some of my favorite books. But that's the end. I basically got 1.5 rows done because I was talking so much. So thanks for knitting with me. I hope that you enjoyed this kind of little video. Who knows if I'll do this again? Who knows if I'll ever have a video this long again? Excuse me. But I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you knitting with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And share this video or share some of my other videos if you feel so inclined. That really does help my channel grow. It helps get, pleases the YouTube algorithm. Liking, commenting, sharing, clicking on videos when you see them all like please the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate it all. I appreciate you being here, and I will see you next time.